So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where Western and Eastern Europe go to war. Now when we're looking at this map here, we can see that obviously Eastern Europe has a lot more countries than Western Europe does. However, it is important to note that a majority of Europe's power comes from the West, like the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and you can say Spain. Whereas Eastern Europe doesn't have as many powers. I'd say Finland, Ukraine, Poland, maybe Romania, Greece, and Turkey. Now, I do want to talk about what countries I have decided to include and not to include. Obviously, Russia is not going to be in this war because that would just make the East automatically win. Whereas in the West, of course, we do still have a lot of powers, in which I decided to add in Turkey because I think they are a good balancing country. So this is the map that I've come up with. You could probably argue a few countries here, like you could maybe argue Germany's Eastern Europe, but I'd say it's definitely more Western Europe. You could maybe argue Austria, you could argue Czechia for the West, but this is more so to do with the Iron Curtain in some ways, also just how culturally they are aligned. Feel free to ridicule me if you want. I do not care though. Anyway, yeah, if you do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And let's go ahead and jump right into the scenario. All right, so I have decided to give Eastern Europe the status of attacker just to give them an early advantage because I do think the blue team might have a little bit more power over them, but it does have a lot more to do with population as well, considering that, you know, Eastern Europe is fairly populated in some of these countries, looking at you, Greece, and you, Ukraine. But first off, the red team is going to go ahead and make their move in Germany and try to take that country out of the war as soon as possible. They invade up and over towards Berlin, where the German army is mostly stationed in order to protect their capital city. Polish troops make their way up into the north, while Czech troops make their way in from the south. All in all, the plan is to kind of encase Berlin over here and force Germany into surrendering the city. Meanwhile, elsewhere, specifically over here in the Central European area, we have Slovakia, Hungary, and Slovenia, of course, with a bunch of other troops as well, carrying out an invasion of Austria and successfully taking over Vienna. With this, Austria is pretty much screwed. When you're looking at Austria on a map, you're going to notice that like the area that's colored in red right now is really the only important area, as we have a lot of mountain over here, and mountain is not good if you're trying to invade somewhere. So theoretically, Austria could hold out, but once again, mountain also equals no people, and no people equals no country. So essentially, Austria is out of the war, but technically they're not. Up north, we have Finland starting to invade into Sweden, going after the coastal areas. This is a fairly mountainous region, so I don't think that they're going to try to invade it, but just for the sake of looking better, let's go ahead and say that Finland is able to take over this area, even though technically they aren't. I mean, actually, you never know, because the Finnish are crazy. Like, they can do some pretty impressive stuff over here in the cold. All right, so the red team has gotten the early lead here, and of course that is because they are the attackers. So let's go ahead and go back to Germany, where we have some pretty interesting things occurring. Poland's invasion of the north of the country is going fairly well as they start to get near to Denmark. At this time though, blue team troops specifically from France, the UK, and Spain are arriving over here and are soon going to be able to hold off the Polish and maybe even push them back. So now Poland's new idea is to go down and start the encirclement process, even though Czechia isn't really ready for it. Now, of course, Ukrainian troops are flooding the Czechia, Turkish and Greek troops are going over to Czechia, but also over here towards Italy. And of course, all the Baltic guys are over here with Poland. It's going to take them a little bit longer to get over here, so that's maybe why Czechia isn't ready, but Poland is going to go ahead and do it no matter what. And just for reference, Berlin is like right there, sort of, might be a little bit more west. But the Poles go down and they complete their encirclement process, but the Czechs are not there to meet up with them. This is going to leave the Poles very exposed to the west, who's going to take advantage of this and start pushing them back in the north and even towards where they started their encirclement, or would-be encirclement. At this point, Czechia is forced to go up north in order to meet Poland, in which they do, successfully cutting off Berlin from the rest of Germany, fight back the Germans a little bit, but eventually are stalemated by a majority of the German army, which is over here in this Berlin area. The blue team continues to push back Poland in the north until eventually they reach the Polish border, and at this point there is a breakthrough into Berlin, and from here the whole idea of encircling the city fails. All right, so now we have a map that looks something like this, and the blue team has finally showed up and they are showing out. Down south in Austria, you have more progress happening as they are able to push back into all of the flatter areas of Austria. Now, I say flatter because Austria isn't necessarily a flat country due to the Alps, but these are technically the flatter areas compared to the big rigid mountains. Anyway, lots of Balkan troops are now entering into Italy and over towards Venice, which is not good. So the Italian army kind of takes some of its troops out of Germany in order to hold back over here, in which case is going to lead Czechia to kind of go out into Bavaria. They only bleed out a little bit until they are eventually stopped, but that is progress nonetheless. Up north, we have Finland continuing to snake down the Swedish coast until eventually and finally the Swedish military shows up and starts to stop them from advancing. Now, this land up here, if you don't know geography, like I used to not know geography, is really useless. The population centers of Norway and Sweden are all around the coastal areas, especially in Oslo and Stockholm. So this area isn't too important unless you're factoring in Swedish iron and Norwegian oil. Just ask Germany that. They know the answer. So all in all, the red team is having themselves a pretty good time in this war, as there isn't much opposition to their expansion just yet. A majority of the Ukrainian, Turkish, and Greek troops are now arriving over here in Austria, and it's about to go very well for them in Central Europe. In Italy, they're able to capture Venice and start to go down the Italian peninsula. Back up north in Bavaria, we have the red team pushing back any troops that were still defending, and now they enter into the panhandle of Austria, which mountains, but let's go ahead and ignore those and say that Austria officially surrenders over to the red team. So now they're bleeding into northern Italy, and that is not good if you are Italian, unless you want to be a part of the red team, which is very good. So a lot of the world right now is questioning why Western Europe isn't doing more. That's probably because they're too focused on defense in Germany as opposed to protecting Italy, and that's fair enough. Italy isn't a very loyal country to anybody. Just ask World War II Germany. Man, I was about to say that I feel bad for World War II Germany, but I definitely do not feel bad for World War II Germany. I'm gonna get canceled. Speaking of World War II Germany, they enter into northern Poland and start going straight towards Kaliningrad. If they can cut Poland off from the sea, that will be a huge win for them. Well, it doesn't really go exactly as planned, as they are stopped by the Polish army, but they do get a good chunk out of northern Poland. Back down south towards Berlin, we have the blue team doing their best and continuing to push out Poland and Czechia until eventually Czechia is retreating from Germany, northern Germany at least. They are still holding on to Bavaria. Down south in Italy, we have them pushing back the red team and making a pretty good counter-offensive thing, but eventually they are stopped and a stalemate breaks out in Italy. All right, let's look at the plans for these two teams. So for the red team, their plan is to take out Sweden by taking over Stockholm, and to take out Germany by taking out Berlin, and eventually using this little momentum they have right here and pushing all the way over to Paris, and that might essentially end the war. Now for the blue team, it's a little bit different. They want to take out Warsaw for sure. They want to take out Helsinki for sure, and then from there, they might just have to kind of ride out the rest of the war because there aren't many important countries that are close to them. Ukraine, you might want to take out Kyiv, and then Athens is all the way down here, and then Ankara is basically, well, it is in Asia, so maybe Turkey shouldn't be in this video, but hey, fight me in the comments because I will fight you in the comments. Back in Germany, the Germans are doing German things as they invade more of Poland and into the Sudetenland, because it's definitely called that still. A pretty impressive campaign leads to the capturing of Prague and even the surrender of Czechia, which is kind of astonishing considering that that's really going to screw over the red team. Except it won't too much because remember, there are other foreign troops here. So really the only parts of Czechia that surrender are the parts that are being held out by only the Czechs. So it's going to look something like this instead of just a complete fall over to the blue team. Speaking of that blue team, they are now going to go ahead and target Warsaw, which is right around there. The spearhead pops out from the front line and their goal is clear to the red team. So instead of trying to do whatever this was, they're going to start to reallocate their troops up north to Poland in order to hold off the blue team. They lose a little bit more of Czechia, although not too important, but in exchange for that, they are able to stalemate the blue team over here in Poland. Back down in Italy, they are doing Italian things as they are now getting their butt kicked for the second time around. This time is a lot worse as they're now stretching over towards the Mediterranean coast over here in the west. And finally, they meet it. That's not good at all because now Italy, especially, Rome, is separated from the rest of the blue team, which is up here if you're colorblind. I just realized colorblind people probably can't watch my videos. Sucks. Back up north in Finland, we have them doing some naval invasions, which is interesting for Finland. But they pull them off successfully and make a landing down here in Sweden. And they are very close to Stockholm, which is right there. So Sweden is going to pull some assets from the north in order to hold off and protect their capital city, which will lead Finland to kind of push them around a little bit. Am I overestimating Finland here? Yeah, probably a little bit, but they are a pretty strong country when you look at their military. No wonder Russia didn't want them joining NATO. It's because they're strong. A lot of artillery. Fun fact. All right, so things are going good and bad for the blue team. Good because they're taking out Poland and Czechia. Bad because Italy's dumb and Sweden is not doing well. So they're going to ramp up their attack and probably run through a lot of manpower. This spearhead to Warsaw picks up at a very high cost. Obviously they were stalemated, and breaking a stalemate is very hard to do, and when you do it, you lose a lot of stuff. So they reach Warsaw and take the city, but the cost of it is a lot of troops. With this capturing of Warsaw, Poland starts to capitulate, and they're able to take over a good portion of the country and even some of the countries around it. But eventually we have the blue team running out and exhausting themselves, which is going to lead to yet another stalemate. Meanwhile, we have the red team, specifically Greece and Turkey, doing some interesting stuff to Italy, taking out their heel and cutting them off from the Sicily area. Effectively, they took over this area and even wipe out Sicily, which leads to a two-front war over here in Italy. and Italy is going to go ahead and surrender. Yeah, we all saw that coming. Italians, I apologize, but this is what your country has done to itself. It's not your fault. It's your ancestors' fault, specifically Mussolini and many before him. But with Italy's surrender, ouch, that hurts. Now let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit and talk about this. Realistically, would the red team be able to take out all of Italy? No, because Italy's a top 15 power, I believe. Do I care? No, because I'm a top 15 person. So at this point, everyone's exhausted, but I'm not going to end the war just yet. Let's say that there's a stalemate during the winter time. This war broke out in July, and now it's December, it's cold, it's snowy, and everyone wants to kill themselves. Alright, so the month is now March, and things are melting, and people are angry about this war. During the winter, literally nothing changed on the front line, except for a few incursions over here to Italy in order to try to liberate the country. Obviously, it was cold as hell, so they didn't get very far. In Sweden, they were able to kick out the Finns, but on the other side of things, Austria was retaken by the red team, and that's literally all it. The front lines in Poland didn't change at all. But now they're about to change with Western Europe repopulating at a very rapid rate. Yep, that's right. They repopulated very quickly. And now they're trying to bleed out into all other countries. This is a very ugly invasion. Basically, go ham, take out everyone you can, and end this war. It didn't work in short term, because now the red team is coming back crashing in, and they're taking back even more land than the blue team had before the winter. But little did they know, this is something called a distraction, and it worked very well, because now Italy is being reliberated. Turkey and Greece were off-taken by this event up here, as they were throwing children at the red team, because all their other troops were down here in Italy, and oh god, trust me, it just works. So Italy is basically taken back, except for a little bit of stuff that's happening over here in the heel area. They're chilling though, they ain't doing anything. And the blue team's plan of using child labor and countless meat shields has worked, but at the cost of the UN, because the UN was not a big fan of that. Now, of course, the UK and France are a part of the big five, being the US, France, UK, Russia, and China. So basically it's just the US, Russia, and China saying what the hell is wrong with you to France and UK. I mean, that's definitely happened before in history, so they're probably used to it. This is probably why they don't care. So now with the red team being dumbfounded and also losing Poland again, they are going to go ahead and do exactly what I just said and lose Poland again. Now they enter into Ukraine with one key task: take Kyiv. So the blue team is going to go ahead and hit up Russia and be like, yo, what's their weakness? And Russia's going to be like, go away, because we hate you still. Yeah. So after burning down all the wheat fields and tons of villages in Ukraine, the blue team is successfully making its way towards Kyiv while committing atrocities and war crimes. At this point, the red team is tired of this, because Turkey and Greece aren't really pulling their weight anymore. Instead, they're just kind of sitting down here in the Balkans, protecting that area, and not really concerned about what's happening over here in the northern side of the red team. But the blue team, they're working together very nicely and coordinately and doing all their atrocities and war crimes and stuff like that. That's why it's working out so well, because when you work together to do bad things, the bad things are multiplied by a lot. I'm a genius, by the way. All right, so the red team has gone to conscription, and that's not good for the blue team, who also is going to conscription. And now even more people are going to die with little changes on this map. In Italy, we have the red team getting kicked out. Jolly day. While up north, Norway and Sweden continue to disappoint, as Finland is about to capture Stockholm. No, they just did it. So Finland is cracked, apparently. Now they're pushing to Oslo. There goes Oslo. Finland is a freaking god, apparently. I don't know how they did it. Maybe because I drew it and made it happen, but they did it. And that's a lot of leverage, but unfortunately, Finland is exhausted. They're now just going to go ahead and defend this territory and not send any troops down to mainland Europe like they had previously been. They're also not even equipping the Baltics or Belarus or Ukraine anymore, just because they need to protect this area, which I'm sure is going to be lit up by the Allies. So back down in Austria, we have the liberation of Austria and the invasion of the Balkans. Fun. They do eventually meet up with that Greek/Turkish wall that I was talking about earlier, and that is going to prevent them from invading down into like the southern Balkans. But Ukraine and Belarus aren't doing too well, as the burning of villages and the burning of wheat fields continues. The human rights violation in this war is insane, but it's Europe, so what do you expect? I mean, they're used to this kind of stuff. Eventually, we had the blue team meeting the border of Russia, which prompts a very, very intense staring contest between the two sides. Belarus surrenders, and the Baltics follow suit, which is very weird of them, but you know, these countries are not strong. They have like a combined military force of maybe 80,000 troops. For these three countries, that's not great. Very reliant on Finland and NATO, in case you didn't know, which Finland is NATO now, so reliant on NATO, let's just say that. All right, with the capturing of Kyiv, that is essentially going to end this war, as the red team is now basically just Greece and Turkey and Romania, and those three guys aren't going to be able to take on these many guys. Now, technically Finland is in this war, and I think Finland will probably get out of this with land just because they did this on their own and they're kind of their own thing, but at the same time they are grouped in with the red team. So with this, let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. All right, looking at this peace treaty here, it is pretty simple. I mean, there's not a lot of borders shared between different red and blue team countries, so there's not that many changes, but we can take a look at the ones that did happen. So up north in Finland here, they get a big old chunk of useless land. I'm sure they probably lobbied for getting this down here, but Sweden probably wouldn't budge on that, neither would the blue team. Finland technically lost this war, but at the same time, they did something very impressive. So they did have a little bit of an edge at peace negotiations in which they were able to get this. Now, resource-wise, this is great. Land-wise and usability, not so great. Let's point out the obvious here. Germany has done German things. They take over half of Poland in a very familiar fashion, also taking over the Sudetenland of Czechia, which automatically forces Czechia and Slovakia to unite into Czechoslovakia. Welcome back. You are going to last maybe 10 years. Austria gets a little bit of land in Hungary and Slovenia, and Italy finally gets their promises fulfilled and is given land off the Adriatic coast. From here, Slovenia and Croatia are forced to unite into what I presume to be some kind of weird Balkan country. On their own, neither of them countries would survive, so they had to unite together. And that's all of the changes. So like I said, there wasn't that many borders shared between the two sides, which is why there aren't that many changes. But yeah, this is going to do it for today's scenario. So if you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Subscriber rate has been low. It's been low ever since we had 100K, and even before we had 100K, it was pretty low. So if I can get you guys to subscribe to the channel, that'd be pretty cool. Ring the notification bell as well, as if you're feeling generous. But if you're like me and you don't like subscribing to channels, don't worry about it. The 100K merch is gone. I warned you. If you didn't get it, then that sucks. But the other merch that isn't limited edition is still there. So if you want to pick up an AdizzPro merchandise item, feel free to, because it's pretty cool. As you can see here, I'm rocking the AdizzPro special hat with the green underbill. I didn't design it to do that. I don't know why they did that, but it works. It's kind of cool. And yeah, so once again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video this Wednesday. And of course, thank you to all the super fans. This includes Patrick Clauser, Yo Moma Moma, Texan Cowboy Cheese, Kylie Speaks Plays, Poland Country Ball, Dimitri, DW Cool Dude, Nevada Garbage Trucks, Yakko, Soviet Ball, and Serminator. Once again, thank you guys.